Space Coconut.
Okay, so let's talk about how much the devs love bandaid fixes. But before I do, if you like these kind of videos, be sure to like, share, sub, and hit the bell. YouTube likes it when you do that, and it'll help the channel grow. I'd also like to invite you to my Mixer channel since I'll start streaming soon. I have a few of the alerts and other things ready, so all I need to do is get through the Theros pre-release and get over this cold I think I got, and I'll be good to go. A few people have asked me why Mixer over Twitch, so I might make a video talking about why, and I'll use that video to announce the date of my first stream, so look forward to that. For now, let's get into this topic. Since the start of the game, there have been issues that the community has called out for. While some were fixed within the core game without the need for perks like pallet vacuums, many others remain or are remedied with perks. Other issues were given a weak fix made even weaker on purpose. Long chases were supposed to be fixed with bloodlust, but they made breaking pallets drop all of your bloodlust, so chases weren't shortened in the end. Losing line of sight dropped bloodlust also, and that chase. They started fixing the big problems by selling them to us through perks and DLCs, many of which were actually suggested by many members of the community that can probably still be found on the Steam forums. Bamboozle was meant for infinites through walls, Spirit Fury was meant for the high number of pallets we had, Barbecue and Chili was meant to incentivize killers to leave the hook, but implemented several ways for survivors to avoid detection through auras. Bloodwarden was meant for gen rushing in a small way, by giving the killer time to find and kill survivors when the gens were powered, and they managed to down and hook a survivor in this case. Corrupt Intervention was another perk meant to slow gen progression. Coulrophobia was meant to hinder pallet healing by survivors, where they would loop a killer from pallet to pallet and heal while the killer broke the pallet. It was possible to do this enough to heal completely and waste several minutes. Hangman's Trick was meant to combat hook sabotage, a problem that was rampant a year or several months earlier. Survivors can still 99 a hook and gain the same benefit though. Hex Haunted Ground was a community idea to give survivors a punishment for cleansing a live totem. Ruin was meant to slow early gen progression. Mad Grit was meant to solve the body blocking issue some players had against coordinated groups. Pop Goes the Weasel was a community idea in regards to how kicking gens normally did nothing. And that's just for the killer side. Regardless of what we thought about these perks and the issues that they were supposed to fix, a much darker series of fixes was coming. If you've seen my previous Ruin video, you'll know that this Ruin change wasn't a big deal to me. I've never liked hexes and only used them long enough to remember why I don't use them. The problem with this Ruin change is the reasoning behind it. Don't worry, this is all related to the devs' tendency towards band-aid fixes, but I need to make a point here. I made this post on the forums. Yes, I've been jailed as I write this. I'll explain why in another video if you're interested. I'll probably be banned on the forums, and if that happens, I'll definitely explain what happened. Anyway, in the announcement that accompanied the PTB patch notes, Peanuts conveyed how all of the Doctor and Ruin changes were meant to be a remedy for how frustrating they can be for survivor players, with no mention about what makes the game frustrating for killer players. The upcoming mid-chapter update will also include a major overhaul to Hex Ruin, and an associated update to the Gatekeeper emblem. Recent data showed that Hex Ruin is used in over 80% of all games in the red ranks, and across the entire user base, it appears in about 45% of all games. We took a close look at the perk to identify what makes it so frustrating to play against, and 3 key issues were identified. After the well-deserved outrage had begun, we were given this gem. Hi, just wanted to address one common concern I've seen from the community. They nerfed Ruin so it wouldn't be hard for new survivors. That's not quite what the intention was. This is subtle, but bear with me. New Ruin is in fact really brutal for new survivors, because it is insidious. They have no idea what's happening, and they struggle to get gens done at all. That little zap effect when you take your hands off a gen, barely noticeable to a new player who's panicking because of the L3 terror radius they're hearing. It's not even noticeable that the gen is regressing twice as fast as the killer had damaged it. which is still half as fast as survivors can repair it, by the way. What we wanted to do was not make it easy for new players, but make it less frustrating for new players. In playtests with newer survivor players, it was 4K with 4 or 5 gens up almost every time, but they didn't hate their time in the game as much because those red skill checks weren't in their faces. I'm looking forward to playing on the PTB with some of you tomorrow. See you in the fog. This failure of PR spin is actually a window into the future of Dead by Daylight. New players are now officially deemed more valuable than old players by behavior. It makes sense business-wise. New players will buy the game, spend money on a DLC or two, buy into the battle pass and get a cosmetic or two, play the game, and then move on to something else within a few months. If they stick around, they become an old player who's already given their money to behavior, so the company doesn't need to do anything for them and continues to cater to the new players that come into the game. As for new players, the company only needs them to stick around long enough to enjoy the game, so they buy a DLC after trying it. Because of their abysmal matchmaking paired with the equally bad emblem system, new players are commonly paired up with more experienced opponents. In the case of new survivor players, they get hit with ruin. I, myself, am a baby survivor who can't hit ruin skill checks, and I commonly move on to look for the totem if I see it's in play. I don't have the spawns memorized, so I either find it randomly, or it's cleansed by someone else, or we all die before it gets cleansed. This is why I can see where their angle lies. If I was a new player who preferred the survivor role, a match like this would put me off, and depending on how often it happened, I might move on to something else and not spend any money on the game at all, at least past the initial purchase. To the veteran players, all of the issues have obvious fixes. Add or change the survivor objective, and then nerf ruin at the same time. Fix the emblem system, fix the matchmaking, fix the maps, and then balance the powers and perks. Unfortunately for us, the cost to make those changes won't immediately be recouped by older players. Older players, the players who would have the most to gain from these changes, have already spent their money on DLCs. I've bought up every DLC up to the Spirit, and only the licensed killers with cash. Everything since has been with iridescent shards. Behavior hasn't gotten a cent of my money. Older players can still buy into the battle pass and buy Oryx cells for cosmetics, but those purchases won't add up to what it would cost to compensate for the changes that are needed, while it just might be coincidence. We did get the battle pass system shortly after the investment from NetEase, and a much quieter 20% investment by Chinese company Gaia. While the Gaia investment doesn't touch Dead by Daylight directly, its influence undoubtedly does through its influence in the company. Back on topic though, the new survivors do suffer from frustration, but it's not from just one perk. Why are new survivors being paired up against players who have Ruin unlocked in the first place? Hex Ruin is a perk tied to the Hag's DLC. In order to unlock it, a player would have had to either buy the Hag DLC, unlock the Teachable on the Hag, and then get it unlocked on their killer of choice. The amount of time this would take depends on their ability to gain blood points. The other way is to obtain it from the Shrine of Secrets. It was available a total of 2 times during the year 2019, so don't hold your breath. Anyone with an ounce of sense can tell that the source of new survivor frustration isn't Ruin. It's matchmaking and ranking. There's no good reason that a new player should be paired up with players who have been playing for quite a bit longer, who will have several perks unlocked. The problems that many veteran players have been talking about for years may very well be the core problem that new survivors are having with Ruin. Matchmaking is currently very bad, but it has always had issues, and for various reasons. The devs make minor changes to the grass, and matchmaking ends up taking a hit because they're excellent at their jobs. But instead of fixing the matchmaking issues, they've opted to hide the ranks from the tally screen in addition to already removing the ranking from the survivor lobby. Both of these changes attempt to sweep the issue under the rug. In a lobby, experienced survivors are grouped with inexperienced survivors, which has a negative outcome for both sides for the sake of getting a match quickly. The experienced survivor is at the mercy of their other teammates to do their jobs well in order to fulfill their objective, The inexperienced survivors are likely matched up against a higher ranked killer because of the experienced survivor. An experienced killer might not have an enjoyable match stomping inexperienced survivors, and their emblem score will suffer because of it. An inexperienced killer will have a hard time regardless, thanks to the speed at which gens can be completed even by slightly competent survivors. By hiding rank at the start, survivors are forced to play with less than ideal teammates, or forced to play against a killer they shouldn't. At the end of the tally screen, while knowing their rank isn't as important, not knowing the rank of your opponents denies the player a chance to look at their win or loss and analyze if rank was an issue. This matchmaking issue isn't the sole culprit though. Their laughable emblem system is designed to rank how a player plays instead of how well they play. The result is a group of players in red ranks that have much less skill than the rest of the players at that rank. Rank Reset was meant to shuffle the player base around so they have a new group of players to play against, but with the recent change to that system, players aren't shuffled as much and have an easier time reaching red ranks. This, in turn, makes the pool of potato survivors in red ranks much greater. While this sounds like a good thing, what it amounts to is the ranking system being removed altogether, and players of all skill levels being forced to play against each other regardless of their true skill level. This greatly impacts the quality of matches in a negative way, and I believe that many people who want to win a match will find matches much more difficult due to the survivor-sidedness, or much less fulfilling thanks to stomping potatoes. All of that sounds like a massive mountain of bugs and issues to fix, and it is. The amount of work that the devs would have to put in to fix the major issues of the game is massive. This is why we get band-aid fixes, because the company, maybe not the devs, the company is only interested in how much money they can make from us. They aren't really interested in our gameplay experience or how much fun we're having. They want to bring in as many new players as they can, take a bite out of their wallets, and send them away, because they don't care about player retention. The average population of the game has barely increased at all over the years, even though the game itself has made the company enough money to create and maintain Death Garden, which died. The company has one hit on their hands, and instead of making it better for the long term, they're focusing on the short term. The company sucks, and the devs are either on board or too scared or powerless to do something to change it. I myself find myself playing less and less, and while that's very bad for my YouTube channel, it's much better for my sanity overall. It's going to be interesting to see what happens during 2020, because this is going to be the year of greed at Behavior Studios. As I was writing this, Dave Richards tweeted this: "Glad to share that I'll be a speaker at the GDC for a second time this year, doing a Game as a Service talk with my colleague Isa in the Business and Marketing track." While this seems like another innocuous tweet from Dave, Games as a Service is a phrase that we should be wary of, especially with the direction they've taken by implementing the Battle Pass. I think in 2020 we're going to see more monetization and less quality gameplay fixes overall. As always, I hope I'm wrong, but I'm currently on a streak of correct predictions. Oh well. But for now, I'll leave you guys with that. Let me know what you thought. Let me know if you agreed, if you disagreed, all that good stuff. And we're all hoping for the best, but none of us, I think, are optimistic about what's going to come this year. I hope I get over this cold faster than I did last time. I think I'm going to play some Tarkov. So until next time, I'll see you in the fog.